Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for February 2nd. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last 2 weeks, we've seen good amounts of precipitation across the northern two-thirds of the Great Basin, which has pushed much of western and northern Nevada into Utah and southern Idaho to above normal precipitation for the last 2 weeks. However, further south, over parts of southern Nevada and southern Utah, much less precipitation has occurred. The snowpack is still very healthy across the area, above 140% of normal over Nevada and into the southern half of Utah, and just above normal as you move further north and east. Looking at the water vapor satellite image for this morning, the area of low pressure that brought significant snowfall to the Great Basin has now moved well east into the Great Plains, with ridging now developing off the west coast. A very weak disturbance is now moving into northern California, which will bring some very light shower activity today to parts of the Great Basin, especially western and northern areas. However, there's another area of low pressure well off the coast that will bring a little bit heavier precipitation as we move into Wednesday and Thursday. Now looking at the ventilation index for today, we have very poor dispersion over much of northern and western areas of the Great Basin, with much better dispersion over parts of southern Utah into the eastern half of Utah as northwest winds are a little bit stronger closer to that area of low pressure. If we look at the individual components of the ventilation index, transport winds on the left shows relatively light winds over most areas, with the exception of the stronger winds in the Wasatch Mountains over central Utah and over the eastern half of the state. Also, mixing heights are quite low over northern and western areas and a little bit higher as you go further east. Looking into Wednesday, this low now moves well east, with ridging now moving across the Great Basin with still some cloud cover. However, with this ridging and lighter winds, we will likely see very poor dispersion in most areas, with the exception of possibly the central Idaho mountains, which will have slightly stronger west winds. Looking at the transport winds on Wednesday, again this indicates those stronger winds over parts of Idaho, with much weaker flow further south. And looking at the mixing heights on the right, again very low mixing heights over much of Nevada into western Utah, with a little bit higher mixing heights as you move further south and north, but again relatively poor dispersion in most areas. On Thursday, this ridge moves east and we have some slight troughing over the eastern half of the Great Basin. However, a much stronger ridge now moves into the west coast, and this will amplify as we move through the weekend. Therefore, on Thursday, again, poor dispersion with those lighter winds, clouds, and even some showers along with cooler weather as we move through Wednesday and Thursday in most areas. Looking at the transport winds on the left, as that low moves over the eastern and northern half of the Great Basin, slightly stronger wind flow, especially in the higher elevations, but relatively weak in all low elevations of Utah and Nevada. Again, mixing heights relatively low over much of Nevada and Utah and slightly higher as you move up north into Idaho. Now looking at the clearing index forecast for Utah from the National Weather Service, clearing indices will remain very high today over the central Utah mountains into the Uinta Basin and over the southern half of the state, but will be decreasing significantly as we move through Wednesday, and winds decrease as an area of low pressure further east pushes further away from the region. On Thursday, another low will approach with winds increasing in the mountains and allowing for clearing indices to increase in the higher elevations. Over the next 3 days, although we will see some light precipitation today with slightly higher precipitation on Wednesday and Thursday, amounts overall will remain relatively light, with most areas seeing less than a half inch of precipitation, with the exception of parts of northeast Nevada and the central Idaho mountains. And most of this precipitation will fall as snowfall, with several inches of new snow expected. As we move into Friday, we start to see a ridge of high pressure move across the Great Basin, with decreasing dispersion, again keeping those mixing heights relatively low with light winds across most of the Great Basin. On Saturday and into Sunday, the ridge amplifies, and this will provide much warmer temperatures for the Great Basin. However, again, very light winds and also morning inversions will remain relatively strong, keeping dispersion low across the area through at least the early part of next week. Now, if we look at precipitation amounts from Friday through Sunday and Monday, with that ridge of high pressure amplifying across the Great Basin and warmer temperatures and light winds, we'll also see much drier conditions. As we move through the middle of February, we'll see likely above normal temperatures in all of the Great Basin, with below normal precipitation over southern Nevada and southern Utah. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.